Kuzu Zangpo and a very warm welcome to Bhutan This Week, our weekly news magazine program. I'm Sonam Rinchen. Our top stories this week. His Majesty the King celebrated his 34th birth anniversary with the people of Punakha. With the launch of Nissan Leaf, an electric car, the government plans to import around 200 electric cars from April this year. And the opposition party said the legality of the Education City project at Wangsisina should not be an issue since in-depth meetings and discussions have been taking place for years. Now the details. His Majesty the King celebrated his 34th birth anniversary with the people of Punakha. People from Laya also joined the celebrations. The day began at the Puna Dewe Chenpe Phodrang.
His Majesty the King was received by His Holiness the Jokembo outside the Holy Machil Hakang. His Majesty then offered prayers at the Machil Hakang. His Majesty was offered Kusutugi Mande by representatives of the Shung Dasang. His Majesty the King, accompanied by Her Majesty the Gelton, offered prayers and lit a butter lamp before the Shabdung Tonde in the courtyard of the Zong. His Majesty was then offered a shikhada by the members of the Shung Dasang, ministers, government officials and representatives of the people. At the Tanzuna, where thousands of people from Punakha and Laya had gathered to commemorate His Majesty's birth anniversary, His Majesty was offered chachang by the people of Punakha. His Majesty also took part in an archery game organized as part of the celebrations. His Majesty spent the day meeting and talking to people who had gathered to celebrate the occasion. His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Gelton also granted toka to the people. Various cultural programs were also performed as part of the celebrations. In the evening, His Majesty returned to Thimphu. His Majesty was received at the Linkana Palace by the representatives of the Taxi Drivers Association, members of the vegetable vendors, their soups representatives, and a group of students. They offered His Majesty a cake and tashikada. His Majesty interacted with them. Compiled for Tenzin Rapge, Dishinomo BBS News.
And in Thimphu, thousands gathered at the Changlimitang Stadium.
In his address, Prime Minister Sring Topke highlighted His Majesty's invaluable achievements in the last 10 years. Lenchin said His Majesty had always personally looked after the welfare and well-being of the Bhutanese, especially the poor, disabled, elderly and other vulnerable groups. And for that, he said His Majesty travelled on foot to every nook and corner of the country. Therefore, Lenchin called on the Bhutanese to pay tribute to His Majesty for the selfless service. Prime Minister Sring Topke also underscored His Majesty's Land Kidu program.
Sanamgi tenlu chetubigi sacha kam me dibole mise nyamchu sai kidu pomisulu kidu zinandi mise dom dunchi geptong dinja tukchure sumlu sa ekar dom dunchi tuktong chikja kidu nandi yu Tangachere Missesugi Hakugobdi, Zambulingi Gerab Nalu, Katelara Beru, Dizumgi Kidu Namigi Sudi, Sadapule Mi Seshuni. Tarengagi Sai Kidu Topmisulu Shuniseru, Muangada Rimochegi Kidu Namidi, Missesugi Beru, Sacha Disut, Lejimbe Dandi Tabdi, Asagen Bedi, Saji Diletundi. Rango Rando Zosubachin Nachare Muacholu Cha Shuni Seru Dechi.
Lenchin said His Majesty has granted citizenship to a total of 8,486 people, putting an end to their worries. Prime Minister Sringtopke also underlined the utmost importance and priority that His Majesty accords to the education.
Chilo niktong thule gusudi zamling katia mebigi yamsin chevigi lamsel zam gusunandi yu tatia lo atara lopchu khora loprim nale ang tangba temisu ngada remoche khorai chakta da chebbe lakher namidi nahi chilo niktong chusulu bewachin lobda jibja ge da torim pekha chuchi lobtu dom chiktong nija ngapchulu miwa chogi chakta da chebbe zentegi lakher nai seshuni.
Lunchin also said increasing cases of disciplinary, alcohol and drug problems in the schools are being reported. He said from now on such lapses will not be tolerated and that the students involved in the cases will face expulsion and those involved in sale of drugs will be dealt with harsh penalties, said the Prime Minister. Lunchin also spoke briefly about the challenges facing the country such as rupee shortage and the unemployment problem, but said Bhutan can overcome the challenges as long as the Bhutanese work hard. He ended his address by calling on the nation to work hard to make Bhutan a self-reliant country. PBS spoke to some of the people gathered at the Changnamithang Stadium to celebrate His Majesty's birthday.
Semgi dinglera menam tabbe anzam bera derede na school aldisugi tem anbini tem tawais
semlu dunge mapaka me gerje chichu me po ngata gato to da kit to atu sigi te melomira.
Happy birthday. Students of Thimphu performed various cultural programs as part of the celebration. Happy birthday to you. Sonam Hamo for PBS News.
His Royal Highness the Gyaltsab Prince Jigme Dorji Wangchuk graced the birth anniversary of His Majesty the King in Mongar. His Royal Highness the Gyaltsab Prince Jigme Dorji Wangchuk was ushered to the ceremonial ground in a traditional chibdral ceremony. The Mongar Dzongkhag Rabde, the Dzongkhag administration and representatives from the 6 Eastern Dzongkhags received His Royal Highness the Gyaltsab. Students from various schools under Mongar Dzongkhag then performed March Past, following which the students and Dzongkhag marks dancers performed various cultural activities to mark the day. Later, His Royal Highness the Gyaltsab interacted with the public. His Royal Highness also took part in the hate-removing game and tug-of-war between the local leaders and teachers. Hundreds of people joined His Royal Highness to celebrate the birth anniversary of His Majesty the King. Meanwhile, as part of the celebration, the Dzongkhag health officials organized a blood donation drive and non-communicable diseases screening. The celebration concluded with Teshileve. Compiled for Pema Namge, Sonam Rinchen for BBS News. Drugi Yumchen Jedren is a Dzongkha biography of late Geyum Aji Phuntsho Chedren Wangchuk. With the launching of the book, it gives the general public an opportunity to look back at the life of late Geyum Aji Phuntsho Chedren Wangchuk.
The Dzongkha biography of late Geyum Aji Phuntsho Chedren Wangchuk was compiled and written by Yuntin Phuntsho from Mongar. He works at His Majesty the 4th Ducal Post Secretariat. It took him about 6 years to research and compile the book. The biography, he said, was written in memory of late Geyum. The book was launched by Her Majesty the Queen Mother Doji Wangmo Wangchuk yesterday. Before the launch, Her Majesty the Queen Mother Doji Wangmo Wangchuk made a symbolic offer of the copy of the book to His Majesty the King and His Majesty the Fourth Dukalpo. Her Majesty the Queen Mother shared a brief history of late Geyum Ajipinso Cherin Wangchuk.
Miwang Gerium Cho Gerapna Giputolu Puserin Bejublet Gekaki Kukor Henge Yongi Genchel Sunda Dugilumba Yomi Loteki Pam Miwang Chanyam Lo Tugi Chamda Tsewa Wong Zimi Dugi Yumchen Ketu Pama Chin.
Late Geyum Ajipinso Cherin Wangchuk was born in 1911 to Dasha Jamyang and Ajidechuk. Late Geyum married second Dukalpo in 1926, and at the age of 18 she gave birth to His Majesty the Third Dukalpo. She passed away at the age of 92 in 2003. The book also tells us about the late Geyum's legacy throughout the country for her patronage and support to the Dharma. The late Geyum supported numerous construction and renovations of Buddhist heritage not only in Bhutan but also in India and Nepal. Sonam Hamo for PBS News.
His Majesty the King granted an audience to the Lieutenant General M.M.S. Rai of the Indian Army on Tuesday. Lieutenant General M.M.S. Rai is an alumnus of the National Defence Academy. He was commissioned from the Indian Military Academy into the Corps of Engineers in 1976. Lieutenant General M.M.S. Rai was appointed as the General Officer Commanding-in-Chief of the Eastern Command of the Indian Army in January this year. The Ambassador-designate of Bangladesh to Bhutan, Jishnu Roy Chowdhury, presented his credentials to His Majesty the King on Wednesday.
As is the tradition, the Ambassador-designate of Bangladesh to Bhutan, Mr. Jishnu Roy Chowdhury, was escorted to the Teshozong in a traditional Chibdral procession. He was then ushered into the Golden Throne Room, where he presented his credentials to His Majesty the King. Following the presentation of credentials, His Majesty the King granted an audience to Mr. Chowdhury. Prior to his current appointment, Ambassador Jishnu Roy Chowdhury was the Director General and Additional Secretary in the Bangladesh's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He had also previously served in different levels of field administration within Bangladesh and also in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Chowdhury has MSc in Public Economic Management and Finance from Birmingham University in the UK. Later in the afternoon, Ambassador Chowdhury called on Foreign Minister Rinzin Doji. Dishinongmo, BBS News.
The march talked about electric car known as Nissan Leaf was launched, coinciding with the birth anniversary of His Majesty the King in the capital. At the launch, the Prime Minister Sringtobge said the government is looking forward to replacing government pull vehicles with the electric cars. The government has plans to import 200 electric cars from April this year.
This electric car is manufactured by Nissan Motor Corporation Limited, based in Japan. At the press conference held this afternoon, Lynchen outlined that the launch is aimed to achieve the government's policy of zero emissions from the transport services.
We will develop a program. We will commit to a program to achieve zero emissions as a nation by a certain target date. An important part of that plan will be sustainable, environmentally friendly, zero-emission transport.
The Chief Executive Officer of the Nissan Motor Corporation said the electric vehicles will move Bhutan closer to the goals of establishing Thimphu as a clean electric city.
EVs also will help Bhutan to reduce the use of fossil fuels and the need to import foreign oil. Nissan is proud to support the country's ambition, clean energy efforts, and we look forward to sharing and leveraging our expertise in electric vehicle technology. As the auto industry leader in zero-emission mobility, Nissan is committed to creating a better world through innovative products.
The Prime Minister shared that the government is planning to replace utility vehicles with electric cars. Taxis and police vehicles are also on the list. Talking about quick charger that will charge the electric car, Lynchen said the electricity power dispensed through the charger will be free of cost. Lynchen also said the electric car has extremely efficient regenerated system.
Which means if you drive to Sangega, it will consume, let's say, 5% of the battery. But on the way down, it will regenerate 4% of the battery.
Nissan Motor Corporation also assures that the electric car can be driven well along the rough and hilly roads too.
The beauty of an electric car is that there are much fewer moving parts, much less wear and tear than there is on a gasoline car. For example, you can't drive a gasoline car underwater. This car, you can drive it underwater because there's no inlet manifold. So from the point of view of hills, electric car has a huge amount of torque, so it's much easier to drive a car in a hilly terrain.
The corporation has collaborated with Thunder Motors Electric Vehicles Company in Bhutan to manufacture electric cars in Bhutan in future. Meanwhile, the government has lifted the ban on the import of electric vehicles few months ago. Pemal Harden, BBS News.
The opposition party met reporters from various media houses for the first time on Thursday after the election. The opposition leader Dr. Pema Jamso, along with the members of parliament, talked about various issues such as the government's 100-day pledges, although more than 200 days have passed. The opposition feels that in 200 days, the government has only managed to fulfill about 40% of their 100-day pledges so far. The opposition also discussed the recent lifting of the import ban on alcohol and furniture. Various issues regarding employment, the education sector, and even the Education City project were discussed. The Education City project in particular was one area where many members of the opposition shared their views.
펜토이드 마다 팀결기 로지고 깨다누 데 팀결기 라임 같이 싫어 마시세 주니라 맞아라 가르 뛴데 볼루쪽 되베 너서 많이 잡다니라 맞아라 중길 행가나 순데 나이 되게에도 나 개인 소대 챔비나로 개인 소대나로 남에 섬에 순데 십십에 나이라 데 팀결 인세 가게 마까 하세 주니라 다니 배울 때인데 때 가지를 도보가네 마살라 맞아라 도도 선생 팀결이 라딩가 제자다 불레 베보미 베네 명라 맞아 팀 다즈베미라 팀 조미라 다 달레팔루 때 달라디 때 답데 모데 수세데베 때 토티 베니 이나메나 되기 태가다 디루 온세디 때 다중일로 중로 유세 준데라 때 가절로 미라 때 대보도루 때 대조미기 레글 봉슈제 카체토도디 때 다다레 다도도 다 공기 다 잭데베 때 베네메 야소버진 때 되기 마치 루기아 칸을 고깝나면서 레짐 bomchi te jani ime ese shunila.
The royal government will receive over 1.7 billion rupees from the Indian government as the refund of excise duty on the import of goods for the year 2012. The refund goes to the country's internal revenue. The internal revenue is used for recurrent expenditure like salaries for the public servants, road maintenance and other public amenities.
An agreement to this was signed between the two countries yesterday in the capital. It was inked by the Director of Department of Revenue and Customs, Yontin Namge, and the Director General of Directorate of Inspection, Customs and Central Excise of India, P.K. Mohanty. Meanwhile, the additional excise refund for 2012 that amounts to over 297 million rupees is yet to be considered. The Government of India has also agreed to provide additional excise refund of over 449 million rupees for the year 2010 and 2011. For the year 2010 to 2011, Bhutan received 3 billion rupees as the excise duty refund from India, and there was remaining 57 million rupees which will be refunded before June this year. According to the Department of Revenue and Customs, excise duty refund is a unique agreement between the two countries purely based on goodwill. Bimal Hutton, BBS News.
Bhutan received an additional of 1.2 billion Nultram from the Government of India as the grant to the government's economic stimulus plan. The cheque was handed over by the Indian ambassador to Bhutan, VP Haran, to the Finance Minister on Monday. With this, Bhutan received a total of 3.7 billion Nultram of the committed 5 billion Nultram so far. To boost the country's economy, a total of 4.2 billion Nultram will be used in the current fiscal year. Under the package, the government will inject 2.1 billion Nultram into the financial sectors. Another 1.9 billion Nultram will be kept as revolving fund. Besides, a total of 200 million Nultram will be injected in the special support scheme, of which 110 million Nultram will be allocated to support pre-employment, 30 million Nultram to support higher education, and 60 million Nultram will be for senior citizens. The Bhutan International Marathon, the first of its kind in the country, was held on Monday. Participants from over 20 countries participated in the 42-kilometer marathon from Tashithang in Gasa to Punakhadzong, and 21-kilometer half marathon from Kabisa to Punakhadzong.
Tsewang Doji managed to come first in the half marathon with a time of 1 hour and 18 minutes. Nimal Hazin finished first among the women in the half marathon in 1 hour and 41 minutes. In the full marathon, Sangye Wangchu crossed the finish line in 2 hours and 38 minutes. Rika Yoshi from Japan crossed the finish line first among the women in the full marathon in 3 hours and 42 minutes. Participants set off from their starting positions at approximately 8 a.m. They competed in 2 races, a 42-kilometer marathon from Tashithang in Gasa and a 21-kilometer half marathon from Kabisa to Punakhadzong. Participants ran at altitudes ranging from 1,700 meters to 1,200 meters above sea level. It was a different experience for many as they ran through Bhutan. One of the highlights seemed to be the views. Participants ran across the longest suspension bridge in Bhutan as they came towards the end of the race. The age range of the event also varied, from runners in their 70s to a runner who was just 11. Tsering Chodin is in class 5. She studies in Kabisa Middle Secondary School. She is the marathon champion in her school. Tsering found a friend in Sarah Paulin. Sarah is in Bhutan for the first time. She is participating in the race with her parents. Both Sarah and Tsering completed the race.
It was tough because it goes up a lot. Also, the altitude is higher than what I know, but it was beautiful that because of the scenery, you could keep going. Wonderful. I think my favorites that I've run so far.
Yeah, it was a difficult run, but it was a very enjoyable run. And 1 month ago, we didn't even think about running a marathon, so 2 weeks ago, we heard about it.
First marathon ever I ran. I'm 59. And I did it, and I'm so happy. It was a difficult marathon for me. The last 10 minutes, it was quite hard, but beautiful stretch through a beautiful country, and I really enjoyed it.
Frank and Elka are Sarah's parents. Frank is 60. He completed the half marathon in 2 hours and 47 minutes with his wife. Frank and his family are from Germany. Susan Kiefer is from the United States. She is the oldest woman participating in the race. She is a geologist.
All along at the aid stations were wonderful. And at one station they said they knew I was the oldest woman and they were keeping track of me. So their microphones to each other, they were making sure I was okay. It was wonderful.
A total of over 200 people participated in the marathon and half marathon. Most runners completed the race. The marathon was organized by the Bhutan Olympic Committee. From Punakha, Tenzin Rapki, PBS News.
Ambassador Kunzangsi Namgyal presented her credentials to the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon on Tuesday at the UN headquarters in New York. Ambassador Kunzangsi Namgyal was appointed permanent representative and ambassador extraordinary plenipotentiary of the Kingdom of Bhutan to the United Nations in New York following a royal cashew. Ambassador Namgyal conveyed to the Secretary General the greetings of His Majesty the King and wished him continued success. They also discussed ways to further enhance cooperation between Bhutan and the United Nations. The much-awaited Nyage Dendur, or the Strongest Man competition, finally ended. The competition was held on the 21st of this month, coinciding with His Majesty's birth anniversary. The competition was held among the 5 finalists from Trongsa, Bumthang, Tashigang, Tashiangtsi and Wangdi Phodrang.
A 34-year-old Phunso Wangdi from Novi Tangsivi under Trongsa Dzongkhak is titled as the Bhutan's Nyage after winning the competition. He received a cash prize of 300,000 ngildrum and a trophy.
Damchi kenchesumi tuji niba miwangadari michi yapsasugi kudadimba sumba mala dinjige pham binchasugi kadi jibanga chi Trongsa Dzongkhak yimise garagi mali melam nami samele jimdap no byanga dari duya hapki nyagigi nale angdang ma thokpe nam sem ga isejni misejina namya ji misejni.
The Nyage from Trongsa was closely followed by Kulne Wangdi, the Nyage from Bumthang Dzongkhak. He took home a cash prize of 200,000 ngildrum. The Nyage of Tashiangtsi, Chikudurji, stood third and was awarded a cash prize of 100,000 ngildrum.
Mapa ngara khatuli beo chim top 5 na juju cham chigira nam sem ga digir tan zum top angni ba thuni lo anzum loksa matang kara tendembe kara jashe sansa be anzum beo dalo debe da loksa matang
maji Tashiangtsi Dzongkhak 아치지 신 동하나레 묘도 아치지 빠냐 아치지 신좀 메르야 아치지 충구지 민담지 박수 이메지기 삼절지 말이 아치지 선랑지 원이 쓰시니라.
Meanwhile, 15 Nyages who failed to qualify in the finals participated in wrestling, cockfight, bullfight and shot put. Winners were also awarded cash prizes. The competition saw more than 160 participants from across the country in the last 4 months of competition. Namgyo Wangchuk for PBS News.
Well, that is all we have for you this week. Join us again next week for yet another edition of Bhutan This Week. Until then, this is Sonam Rinchen saying goodbye.